So, okay, now we're going to get into the fantasy portion of the presentation, because in all honesty, this is the work that we're engaged in. I was in Austin a week and a half ago. This is my best guess of where people are right now, but the wording won't be right. It isn't even right for high school. It's closer in high school because that's the area I'm working on. I'm going to give you 3 claims. Oops, I forgot this. Okay. Need to talk about prototype for a minute. Every prototype is going to involve 1 or 2 claims, several evidence statements, prototype tasks, sort of outline about what might the task look like, and then sample tasks for each prototype. So here are my possible claims. 4th grade, I picked a cluster level claim, and I kind of cheated because I picked geometry cluster, a cluster in geometry, and there's only one cluster in geometry, and so it's kind of also a domain level claim, but I crossed a couple of standards within that cluster. Students draw and identify lines and angles and understand that geometric figures can be analyzed and classified based on their properties. Now, there's some sort of general rules. Claims about students can use words like understand. Evidence and task don't use words like that. They're more specific. What is the evidence that would convince you a kid was like this, could do this? What's the evidence? Most of you, my guess is, are going to flip to what would I ask them to do, which is really the tasks. And that's okay, because sometimes I find myself working back and forth between those 2 things. I think about the tasks and I think, okay, so what would they give me back? What would that's the evidence. You know, what am I going to read from them doing that task that convinces me about this? Why do I want to use that task? So that evidence model is sort of a new idea, and it's tough to do, and I'm going to get you to do it in just a minute. Okay, possible domain level claim at grade 6. They use algebraic expressions, equations, and inequalities to represent and analyze quantitative relationships between dependent and independent variables. Yeah, it's a mouthful, I get that. These tend to be kind of mouthful-y things, at least at this point. They may get refined later on. If you look at your clusters and domain in expressions and equations, you'll kind of pick up, although you don't have the language of the standards, you'll kind of pick up that this crosses a couple of clusters there. Much of the evidence statements currently are being drawn from language within the standards. We don't want this to surprise you. There should be nothing in this that surprises you. We're hoping that we can sort of help pull things together as we move to the domain level. Excuse me. So there may be some new things, but hopefully there'll be coherent things. They won't. Where did that come from? So I don't want you to worry. The standards are pretty set. The substance is there. We're going to build on that. We're going to need to figure out what evidence would support this statement about students. And finally, as I said, this was pretty close to one we actually wrote last week. Students observe and anticipate a function given a graph or in verbal form. They can build new functions from existing functions to account for variation in these key features. Now, this is kind of a modeling feel to it. You know, if you've got some context and you're trying to write a function, pick a function, that's not new news. We've been trying to teach that for a long time. But this, if you look at the domains, crosses interpreting functions and building functions, because there's also that part about using existing functions to build new ones. Now, I've only included one of the other 2 domains in the function conceptual category, and that is the linear, quadratic, and exponential models. There's also trigonometric models. And it just depends upon what your students know as to how far you go with that, or what grade level you're doing this. But this is an example of a subject level claim. Now, as I said, we don't have a lot of evidence written for this yet. Excuse me. So I'm going to ask you, you have a handout. It has these 3 claims on it. It's in the middle of your packet someplace. And it has some space with the statement, student work is characterized by. I want you to talk with your colleagues. Hopefully you're sitting near somebody that at least has some interest in the grade level that you teach, or used to teach. And I want you to just try to fill in a couple of these. See if you can make what you think is an evidence statement. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that.